In the shadows of Horizon Aerospace, Clara Evans, a janitor with a hidden past, faces cruel mockery. When a drone demo spirals into chaos, her secret skills could save the day. Welcome to Life Bond Tales. Like this video and subscribe to get notification for latest video. Clara Evans pushed her cleaning cart through the steel corridors of Horizon Aerospace Institute, the desert sky outside still bruised with the purple of pre-dawn. At 62, her hands were rough as the Nevada sand, knuckles swollen from years of gripping mops and brooms, but her steps were steady, deliberate, as if each one carried a memory heavier than the cart itself. It was 4:30 a.m. in 2030, and the air at Horizon hummed with the promise of flight. Drones with wings like liquid silver, spacecraft that could kiss the stars. Clara moved past hangars where engineers in sleek jumpsuits tinkered with machines that hadn't yet earned names, their voices sharp with ambition, their eyes sliding over her like she was part of the furniture. "Morning, Clara," mumbled a security guard, his gaze fixed on a glowing tablet, not her face. She nodded, her voice soft as the hymn she hummed under her breath, an old folk tune her mother taught her in a Georgia kitchen decades ago. The hangar doors loomed taller than her childhood home, dwarfing her small frame, but Clara didn't shrink. She'd been here 15 years, sweeping beneath the dreams of those who never asked her name, their laughter trailing her like exhaust. Once, as she polished a glass panel, a young tech snickered, "Auntie Mop's keeping the future shiny." Clara kept wiping, her reflection warped in the glass, showing a woman with silver streaks in her hair and eyes that held secrets deeper than the desert night. She didn't flinch, didn't snap back, but her heart ached with the weight of a life no one here knew, a life where she'd once soared above clouds in experimental aircraft, a test pilot for the Starling Squadron in the 1990s, her hands on controls that could outrun the wind. Now those hands scrubbed coffee stains from break room tables, and the only wings she touched were the dust-covered ones on her faded jacket, tucked away in her locker. The emblem, a starling in flight, was barely visible, but she traced it sometimes, remembering the roar of engines and the burn of a crash that stole her sky. As she paused to empty a trash bin, a group of trainees strode by, their boots clicking, their chatter about drone specs slicing through her quiet hymn. One dropped a wrapper. Clara bent to pick it up, her shoulder twinging from an old injury, a reminder of a bailout that never made the news. She straightened, her gaze catching a prototype drone, its curves gleaming like a promise she'd once believed in. "Beautiful," she whispered, her breath fogging the air. The trainees didn't. Claire didn't see the spark in her eyes, but the desert morning did, cool and vast, holding her secrets in its silence. Clara pushed her cart forward, the wheels creaking like an old song. Her heart both heavy and hopeful, unaware that today would mark the beginning of something new, something that would lift her from the shadows of the hangar floor. The sun had barely crested the Nevada horizon when Clara Evans maneuvered her cart into Hangar 3, the air now warm with the buzz of Horizon Aerospace's morning shift. Her grey coveralls blended into the shadows of towering drones, their sleek forms catching the first light like polished obsidian. She moved with quiet purpose, emptying trash bins filled with energy drink cans and crumpled schematics, her hands steady despite the faint ache in her left shoulder, a scar from a 1998 test flight gone wrong when her prototype drone spun out over the Pacific, and she ejected into a sea that swallowed her career. No one at Horizon knew that story, nor did they care to ask, their eyes fixed on screens and skyward dreams. As Clara swept near a workbench, a group of young engineers, their badges gleaming with prestigious university names, huddled around. A tablet, their laughter sharp and careless. Julian Hart, a 24-year-old pilot in training with a jawline sharper than his wit, led the pack. His father, a Horizon investor, ensured his name carried weight, and he wore that privilege like a second skin. "Check this," Julian said, angling his phone to capture Clara as she knelt to scrub a sticky energy drink spill. The camera's flash caught her off guard, and the group erupted, one voice crowing, "Auntie Mop's on duty!" Clara's jaw tightened, but she kept scrubbing, her hymn replaced by a silence that felt heavier than the hangar's steel beams. She rose, pushing her cart past them, when Julian's voice cut through again. "Yo, Clara, you ever dream of flying these things? Or is the mop your speed?" His friend snickered, but Clara's eyes flicked to a nearby drone, its sensors winking like stars she once chased. She said nothing, her silence a shield, but inside memories flickered. Nights spent sketching stabilization algorithms, her designs groundbreaking until a superior claimed them as his own. Later in the break room, she sat alone. Her lunch, a thermos of soup and a single peach, its skin bruised from a fall. As she bit into it, a junior tech bumped her table, sending her spoon clattering. "My bad," he muttered, not stopping. Clara retrieved it, her fingers brushing the faded Starling Squadron patch on her jacket, now draped over a chair. She traced the bird's wings, her mind drifting to a time when her call sign, Starling, echoed over radio waves. Her phone buzzed, jarring her back, a message from a number she hadn't seen in decades. "Starling, they don't know who you are. Keep flying low." It was from Lila, a former squadron mate, her words a spark in Clara's chest. She tucked the phone away, but the message lingered, stirring a resolve she thought she'd buried. By mid-morning, Julian's crew had posted the video online, captioned, "Keeping the future shiny, one mop at a time." It spread through horizons, internal network likes and comments piling up like debris. Clara saw it on a break room monitor, her face frozen mid-scrub, the laughter echoing in digital waves. She didn't flinch, but her hands trembled as she poured fresh water into her bucket. Outside, Julian and his entourage lounged near a prototype drone, their flight suits pristine, their confidence a currency Clara no longer traded in. One tossed a toy drone onto her cart, a sticky note attached, "Fly this, Grandma." The group howled, but Clara picked it up, her fingers tracing its plastic frame, her eyes distant. She remembered real drones, ones she'd piloted through storms, their controls an extension of her will. She pocketed the toy, her heart a quiet furnace, and pushed her cart toward Hangar 4. There, alone with the machines, she paused before a drone's control panel, its lights blinking in a rhythm she still understood. "You're more than they. Think," she whispered, not to the drone but to herself. The mockery stung, but Lila's message burned brighter, a reminder of a sky she'd once owned. As she left the hangar, the toy drone in her pocket felt heavier than her mop, a small rebellion against the weight of being unseen. Clara didn't know it yet, but Julian's next move would push her closer to reclaiming her place, and the skies would soon feel her touch again. Clara Evans stood in the dim glow of Hangar 4's overhead lights, her cleaning cart parked beside a sleek drone prototype, its hull reflecting the faint outline of her weathered face. The morning's mockery still lingered, Julian Hart's video, the toy drone with its cruel note, but she pushed it down, focusing on the rhythm of her work. The Nevada desert outside baked under a climbing sun, but inside the air was cool, charged with the hum of anticipation. A group of trainees, led by Julian, gathered near a simulator pod, their laughter slicing through the hangar's quiet. Julian, his flight suit tailored to his ego, waved her over with a grin too sharp to trust. "Hey, Clara, you talk a big game about these machines," he said, his voice loud enough to draw eyes. "Why don't you show us what you've got?" The others smirked, phones already out, ready to capture her failure. He held up a simulator access card, dangling it like bait. "We got you a spot in today's rotation, no pressure." Clara's heart thudded, her fingers tightening around her mop handle. The simulator pod loomed, a beast of steel and screens, designed to mimic the real drones she'd once flown. She hesitated, the weight of Lila's text, "Keep flying low," clashing, with a spark of defiance. "Me?" she asked, her voice steady but low. Julian's grin widened. "Yeah, you. Unless you're scared of crashing a fake drone too." The crowd chuckled, but a few faces, engineers who'd seen her linger near control panels, watched with curiosity. Clara set her mop against the cart, her shoulder twinging as she straightened. "I've got a few tricks left," she said half to herself, and stepped toward the pod. The room stirred, a mix of mockery and intrigue. Inside, the simulator's controls felt like a ghost of her past, the throttle cool under her palm, the screens alive with a virtual sky. Unbeknownst to Clara, Julian and his crew had tampered with the settings, reversed controls, delayed sensor feedback, wind shear cranked to maximum. It was a setup for disaster, a prank meant to humiliate. As the simulation began, Clara's instincts kicked in, her hands moving with a precision honed decades ago. The virtual drone lifted, but the horizon tilted unnaturally, alarms blaring. "Controls are off," she muttered, her eyes narrowing. She adjusted, compensating for the lag, her fingers dancing across switches she hadn't touched in years. The crowd outside watched, their laughter fading as the drone on screen wobbled but didn't crash. Clara's breath was steady, her mind racing through old flight patterns, countering the sabotage with muscle memory. For a moment she stabilized it, the drone soaring through pixelated clouds. Then the rigged settings overwhelmed her, a sudden dip, a spin, and the screen flashed red. "Crash!" The pod hissed open, and Julian's voice cut through. "Nice. Try, Auntie Mop. Stick to the floors." The crowd erupted, some tossing crumpled paper like confetti. Clara climbed out, her shirt damp with sweat, her hands trembling but her face calm. Commander Lena Voss, the lead instructor, stood at the pod's base, her arms crossed. "Fun's over, Ms. Evans," she said, her tone cold. "This isn't your place." Clara met her gaze, her voice barely above a whisper. "I almost had." "It," Voss scoffed, "almost doesn't fly." Clara turned away, the sting of failure mixing with a quiet pride. She'd come closer than they'd expected. In the empty women's locker room, she sat on a bench, the toy drone from Julian's. Prank in her hands, she turned it over, its plastic wings catching the fluorescent light. Her phone buzzed again, no name, just a message. "They rigged it. We saw. You're still a starling." It was another old squad mate, someone who remembered her sky. Clara's. Eyes burned, but she blinked back the tears, her resolve hardening like steel. She slipped the toy drone into her pocket and stood, the ache in her shoulder, a reminder of battles fought and survived. Back at her small apartment that night, she pulled a worn notebook from a drawer, its pages filled with algorithms and sketches from her pilot days. She traced a diagram labeled Stabilizer V3 Evans 97, her finger lingering on the date. They'd stolen her work, buried her name, but the sky hadn't forgotten. Clara closed the notebook, her jaw set. She wasn't done yet. Tomorrow she'd walk back into Horizon, not as a janitor, but as someone ready to reclaim what was hers. The humiliation was fuel now, and the next move would be hers. The Nevada sun blazed over Horizon Aerospace Institute, casting long shadows across the tarmac as the annual showcase day unfolded with fanfare. Crowds of investors, journalists, and military brass swarmed the demo tents, their chatter drowned by the pulsing music and the roar of a prototype drone taxiing into position. Clara Evans stood at the edge of the gathering, nearly invisible, in a borrowed ground crew jacket, its collar pulled high to shield her face. Her usual cart was locked away in the janitor's closet, untouched since yesterday's rigged simulator humiliation. The sting of Julian Hart's prank and Commander Lena Voss's dismissal burned, but Clara's eyes were fixed on the X-47 drone, its sleek frame a testament to decades of innovation, some of it hers, uncredited. Today was the first live flight. Demo of the X-47, a stealth-capable marvel meant to impress the world. Julian, strutting in a flight suit that gleamed like his ambition, climbed into the cockpit alongside his co-pilot, Mia Chen, a nervous but talented trainee who struggled. With high-pressure scenarios, Clara's fingers twitched, her old pilot instinct stirring as she watched the drone's engines hum to life, a sound she could still read like a heartbeat. The crowd cheered as the X-47 lifted off, slicing through the desert sky with grace. For 10 minutes it was perfection, loops, dives, a showcase of precision. Then a crackle broke over the open comms. "Stabilizers failing," Mia's voice trembled. "Altitude dropping fast, 1,500 feet per second." Julian's response was sharp, panicked. "Throttle's not responding. We've got lateral drift." The drone pitched violently, its nose dipping toward the test zone, where temporary bleachers held spectators. On the ground, Voss's face paled, her clipboard clattering to the pavement. The crowd hushed, cameras swinging upward. Clara stepped forward, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "Get me comms," she said, her tone cutting through the chaos. Voss laughed, a brittle sound. "You're not even staff anymore, Evans." Clara didn't blink. "You want that drone in pieces?" Tara, a young engineer who'd always admired Clara's quiet kindness, hesitated, then thrust a headset into her hands. Clara slipped it on, her voice clear as glass. "X-47, this is ground command. Patch in Clara Evans. Julian, Mia, listen. Close. Disable auto-stabilizers. Switch to manual. Reduce thrust to 70%. Angle east now." Julian's voice crackled back, shaky. "Who the hell is this?" Clara leaned into the mic. "Someone who knows that drone better than you. I designed its stabilizers. Do it." Silence hung for a heartbeat. Then Mia's voice. "Manual engaged. Thrust at 70. Clara's instructions flowed like a river, calm but relentless. "Ease the flaps to 80%. Feel the wind, don't fight it. Bank east, slow and steady." The drone groaned, its frame shuddering on the live feed, but it leveled out, the nose lifting. The crowd held its breath as Clara's voice guided them, her words precise, born from years of instinct and uncredited genius. "Bring her down, Mia, landing gear out, gentle on the throttle." The X-47's tires kissed the tarmac, stopping just shy of the main hangar. The crowd erupted, applause thundering across the desert. Julian stumbled out of the cockpit, pale and shaking, his bravado gone. Mia followed, tears streaking her face, but she looked at Clara with something new, respect. Voss stood frozen, her authority unraveling. A journalist shoved a mic toward her. "Who is that woman?" Voss stammered. She used to clean here." Clara removed her cap, her silver hair catching the sun, her eyes meeting Voss's with quiet defiance. Tara whispered to a colleague, "She's no janitor." Across the tarmac, a grizzled man in a pilot's jacket watched, his face familiar to Clara. It was General Amos Reed, her old Starling Squadron commander, here as a guest. He nodded, a faint smile breaking through. Clara's chest tightened. She hadn't seen him since the crash that ended her career. As the crowd buzzed, Amos approached, his voice low. "You haven't changed, Starling. Still saving the day." Clara's throat caught, but she managed. "They didn't leave me much. Choice." Amos's eyes softened. "They will now." The demo's chaos settled, but whispers spread. Clara's voice on the comms, her impossible knowledge of the X-47 systems. Julian avoided her gaze, his phone silent for once. Mia lingered nearby, wanting to speak, but unsure how. Clara handed the headset back to Tara, her hands steady now, the weight of the moment sinking in. She'd saved the drone, the pilots, the day. But more than that, she'd cracked open the door to her past. The sky had called her back, and she'd answered without hesitation. As she walked away, the crowd parting for her, Clara felt the desert wind on her face, carrying the promise of something bigger. Amos's words echoed. They'd need her again, and soon. The desert air hung heavy with the aftermath of the X-47's near disaster. The Horizon Aerospace Institute's tarmac alive with murmurs, as journalists scribbled notes and investors whispered in tight clusters. Clara Evans stood near the hangar's edge, her borrowed ground crew jacket now unzipped, revealing the worn Starling Squadron patch she'd sewn onto her shirt. The crowd's eyes followed her, no longer invisible, their curiosity a mix of awe and confusion. Julian Hart, still pale from the failed flight, slunk to the sidelines, his usual swagger replaced by a fidgeting unease. Mia Chen, his co-pilot, hovered nearby, her gaze darting to Clara with a quiet gratitude she hadn't yet voiced. Commander Lena Voss, her authority shaken, barked orders to disperse the crowd, but her voice lacked its usual steel. Clara's calm instructions over the comms had saved the day, and the weight of that truth rippled through Horizon like a shockwave. General Amos Reed, the grizzled Starling Squadron veteran, approached Clara again, holding a thin folder sealed with a military stamp. "This changes everything, Starling," he said, his voice low but firm. He handed her the folder, its edges yellowed with age. Inside were patent drafts, schematics, and test logs for the X-series stabilizers, all bearing her name, Clara Evans, 1997. Her breath caught as she read the notes. Her notes, her designs, buried decades ago by Dr. Marcus Reed, no relation to Amos, who'd claimed her work as his own to secure Horizon's early funding. "He silenced you," Amos said, his eyes hard, "but the truth doesn't stay buried." Clara's fingers trembled, tracing her old handwriting. The equations she'd crafted in sleepless nights now powering the drones she'd cleaned around. The crowd parted as a reporter, sensing a story, pushed forward. "Ms. Evans, did you really design that tech?" Clara looked up, her voice steady but soft. "I didn't just design it, I flew it first." The words landed like a thunderclap, silence sweeping the tarmac. Voss, overhearing, stepped closer, her face a mask of disbelief. "That's impossible," she snapped. "You're a janitor." Amos raised a hand. "She's a pilot, Commander. And the mind behind your fleet." He turned to the crowd, raising his voice. "Clara Evans flew experimental drones for the Starling Squadron in the 90s. Her stabilizers made your X-47 possible. Check the patents." Whispers turned to gasps as phones lit up, journalists searching archives on the spot. Within minutes, a grainy photo surfaced online, a younger Clara, flight helmet under her arm, standing beside a prototype drone in 1996. The headline spread, "Janitor Saves Horizon Demo, Revealed as Drone Tech Pioneer." Julian, scrolling his phone, froze, his face flushed with shame. Mia approached Clara, her voice small. "I'm sorry, I didn't know. Thank you." Clara nodded, her eyes kind but unyielding. "You flew well, Mia. Trust yourself next time." The moment was cut short as Horizon's CEO Evelyn Carter arrived, summoned by the chaos. She clutched a tablet, her face pale as she read the unearthed patents. "Ms. Evans," she said, her voice tight, "this is unprecedented. Why didn't you speak up?" Clara met her gaze. "I did, 20 years ago. No one listened." Carter's jaw tightened, and she turned to Voss. "We need to address this now." That evening, a company-wide assembly was called in Hangar 1, the cavernous space packed with employees, from engineers to interns. Clara stood at the front, her old notebook open on a table, its pages a testament to her genius. She spoke, her voice carrying a quiet power. "I cleaned your floors because it was work that needed doing. But I built your skies because it was work I loved." She held up the notebook, showing a sketch of the X-47's stabilizer system. "This was mine. Marcus Reed took it, and I let him because I thought my time was done. It wasn't." The room erupted in applause, some eyes wet with emotion. Tara, the engineer who'd handed Clara the headset, clapped hardest, her face glowing with pride. Julian stood at the back, silent, his hands shoved in his pockets. Carter stepped forward, her tone formal but shaken. "Ms. Evans, on behalf of Horizon, I apologize. We're reinstating you as a lead consultant effective immediately. And we've uncovered records tying you to a 15% stake in Horizon's founding shares, withheld by Reed." Clara blinked, the weight of it sinking in, a stake worth millions, enough to reshape her life. She nodded, but her eyes were on the notebook, not the promise of wealth. "I don't need shares," she said. "I need a chance to teach others to fly." The crowd roared again, and even Voss, standing stiffly to the side, gave a reluctant nod. As the assembly ended, Amos pulled Clara aside. "You're not just a pilot, Starling. You're a force. What's next?" Clara smiled, a spark igniting in her chest. "I'm building something new, for people like me who were told they don't belong." The desert night settled over Horizon, and Clara walked to her car, the folder of patents under her arm, her heart lighter than it had been. In years, she'd reclaimed her name, her work, and a piece of the sky she'd never stopped loving. But the real fight, building a legacy for others, was just beginning. The Nevada desert stretched wide under a twilight sky, its vastness a mirror to the new horizon Clara Evans was building at Horizon Aerospace Institute. A year had passed since her voice steadied the X-47 drone through a near-catastrophic demo, since her buried past as a Starling Squadron pilot and uncredited inventor resurfaced to rewrite her story. Now Clara stood outside a freshly unveiled hangar, its silver walls etched with bold letters. Starling Academy for Flight and Engineering. Inside, no polished trophies or corporate banners adorned the space, just workbenches cluttered with drone parts, manuals stacked high, and desks where students scribbled with a hunger to learn. Clara, now 63, wore a flight suit that fit like a second skin, its fabric plain but marked with her squadron's Starling emblem, no longer faded but proudly restitched. She sipped coffee from a battered thermos, watching her students, veterans, with weathered hands, women over 40 who'd been told their dreams were too late, kids from desert towns where the sky was just a story. Tara, the engineer who'd handed Clara the headset that fateful day, now led the academy as head instructor, her voice sharp and warm as she taught a group how to calibrate a drone's sensors. "Forget where you started," Tara said, echoing Clara's wisdom. "Focus on what you can build." Clara smiled, leaning against a workbench, her eyes catching the glint of a Raven-class drone overhead, piloted by a student who'd once thought flight was for others. The drones, named in her honor, hummed with the stabilizers she'd designed decades ago, now credited to her name. The academy was her condition for accepting Horizon's reinstated shares. She'd funneled the wealth into this program, a place where the overlooked could claim the sky. Julian Hart, his arrogance humbled, worked quietly in the corner as a program coordinator, organizing schedules and supplies. He'd returned after months away, his social media silent, his eyes carrying a new weight. Clara had given him a second chance, not out of pity, but because she believed the sky could change people just as it had changed her. "You're learning," she'd told him once, and he'd nodded, his gratitude unspoken but clear in his steady work. Outside, the runway stretched long and open, its surface warmed by the setting sun. Clara walked its length, her boots steady, her old shoulder ache dulled by purpose. A small girl, no older than 10, ran up, clutching a model drone painted with clumsy stars. "Ms. Clara," she said, her eyes wide, "can I fly like you someday?" Clara knelt, her knees creaking, and touched the girl's drone. "Sweetheart, you're already flying. Keep building, keep dreaming, and the sky's yours." The girl beamed, running off to join her brother, who waved a toy plane in the air. Clara stood, her gaze lifting to the horizon, where two Raven-class drones soared, their paths steady and sure. The sound stirred her heart, a reminder of nights spent in cockpits, of equations scratched in her notebook, of a life reclaimed. Back inside, the academy buzzed with life. A veteran named Sam, his hands scarred from years in construction, presented Clara with a blueprint he'd drafted for a drone wing modification. "Think it'll work?" he asked, his voice shy but eager. Clara studied it, her eyes tracing, the lines with the same care she'd once given her own designs. "It's got potential," she said. "Test it, fail if you have to. That's how we learn." Sam grinned, his confidence blooming. Across the room, a woman named Rosa, who'd spent decades as a seamstress, adjusted a drone's wiring with steady fingers. "Never thought I'd be here," she told Clara. "You made this possible." Clara shook her head. "You did, I just opened the door." As the session ended, Clara lingered in the hangar, the lights dimming as students packed up. She pulled her old notebook from her bag, its pages now joined by new ones, sketches from her students, ideas for drones that could monitor wildfires or deliver medical supplies to remote towns. The academy wasn't just about flight. It was about lifting others, about proving the sky didn't care about your past, only your will to rise. Outside, the desert cooled, the stars sharp against the night. Clara stepped onto the tarmac, her thermos in hand, and listened to the distant hum of a drone circling above, flown by a student who'd mastered her first solo flight that day. The sound was a song, one Clara had sung long ago and now shared with others. Julian approached, hesitant, carrying a tablet with the academy's next semester schedule. "Clara, I'm sorry again. For everything." She met his eyes, her voice gentle but firm. "Don't apologize, build something better." He nodded, a faint smile breaking through, and walked back to the hangar. Clara stayed, the wind brushing her face, carrying the scent of sage and possibility. The Starling Academy was her legacy, not of wealth or fame, but of doors opened, of hands extended to those who'd been told to stay grounded. As she looked up, a meteor streaked across the sky, brief but brilliant, and Clara felt her heart soar with it. She wasn't just a pilot or an inventor. She was a teacher, a guide, a starling who'd found her wings again. And as the desert night wrapped around her, she knew the sky would never be the same. Not for her, not for her students, not for anyone who dared to look up. Clara Evans stood on the Starling Academy's tarmac, watching her students' drones dance under the stars. The desert wind carried their laughter, blending with the hum of engines she'd helped them build. At 63, she'd traded her mop for a legacy, proving the sky belonged to anyone who dared to rise. The girl with the toy, drone waved and Clara smiled, her heart as vast as the open horizon.